Listen, the NPTE, the National Physical Therapy Examination, is unlike any exam you've ever written in your entire academic career. If you do not prepare for this thing properly, and if you do not prepare enough, you are going to be in a world of trouble when it comes to trying to write this thing and pass it. And so today I'm going to share with you 10 critical tips that you can implement when it comes to preparing to study and preparing to write this exam so that you can make it through successfully to the other side. So let's get to it. Hey everyone, welcome to another video. I hope you're doing well and I hope this video finds you in good spirits. Hey, if this is your first time meeting me, my name's Jim. I'm a physical therapist. I love what it is that I do. I love helping other individuals become physical therapists, and I love sharing my knowledge and my expertise with the general public in any way I can to benefit them. So if that sounds interesting to you in any way, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button so you're getting all the content that I'm putting out. All right, with that being said, let's start talking about ways to prepare for the NPTE. All right, when it comes to writing the NPTE, this is unlike any exam you've ever written before, and I'm sure you know that. This is, again, comprising all the past 3 years of your clinical rotations and your didactic coursework that you now have to go and be tested on. And this can feel overwhelming because it's a lot of material that you have to brush up on, relearn, or even learn for the first time. That happens to all of us as we go through this study process, and that's okay. So you need to take this seriously and you need to have a plan of attack here, because if not, this is going to be overwhelming and you're not going to have a whole lot of luck when it comes to trying to pass this thing. So I'm just going to get right to the tips here. And again, if there's other tips that I leave out that you think are beneficial, that other PT students need to know about, please leave them in the comment section below, because there's a million different ways that people can go about studying and preparing for this exam. We're all different. We have different study processes, different philosophies, different mentalities, and so I cannot address everything within one single video. But you leaving your thoughts and comments below can help other individuals, and we can, again, help each other from a more global perspective. All right, let's get right to it. All right, tip number 1. This is going to sound incredibly obvious. It's going to sound incredibly simple, but it's amazing how many students either don't do it or don't do it well enough. You need to have a written, detailed study plan, a plan of attack for how you're going to go about this whole study process. It's going to look different for everyone. The amount of time that you study, for some people, it's going to be 4 weeks. For most people, it'll be 6 or 8 weeks. For some, it'll be 10 or 12. Nothing's right or wrong. It's going to be what's working best for you. But you must understand that you have to have a regimented study system in place for what each week is going to look like. That sounds obvious, but not everyone does it. But what you're going to find is that as you start to get into your studies, there's a lot of material that you've either forgotten about or you have to really enhance your knowledge on and learn more about it. This is all sorts of stuff that you unearth and you uncover as you go through this process. So when you're regimented and you have a study plan in place, you make sure that you're giving yourself enough time to cover material. You make sure that you're building this plan in a way that's not going to burn you out, that's going to give you productive and effective studying. So however you design your study calendar is up to you, but you need to have something. That's the first tip. You need to have a study plan. All right, now tip number 2, kind of dovetailing from tip number 1, is the fact that you need to look at this whole study and preparation process as a marathon and not a sprint. Again, as I mentioned before, everyone's going to have different amounts of time that they're studying for, different number of weeks and everything else. But the bottom line is there's so much material you're going to have to brush up on, recommit to memory, learn for the first time even, that you can't think it's going to be possible to do it or do it effectively in just a couple of weeks. Or again, being able to study 6 hours every single day for 5-6 weeks in a row. Unless you are an exception, that's likely not going to pan out good for you. So look at this as a marathon, not a sprint. One of the things that I did is, again, I took a number of weeks in studying for this, but I started out casual. Again, just the first couple of weeks was really all about just collecting all my resources and compiling them in ways that when my studying got serious, I didn't have to start kind of wondering where to go to find the answers for a lot of the material I knew I'd have to relearn or brush up on. I had it all right there. And so I took a couple weeks to casually do that, just read up on things that I was interested in, stuff that I wanted to learn for the sake of learning for myself. And then after about 2 weeks, I had about another 10 weeks to go. And I, from there, got focused more and more, had my study hours and everything mapped out. But again, in a way that it was a marathon pace, not a sprint. So ask yourself how you're going to design everything here for your study plan in a way that is a marathon and not a sprint. Okay, tip number 3. I want you, as you build your study plan and as you start to study, to focus on the big 3. Now, the big 3 are musculoskeletal, neurological, and cardiopulmonary. Those 3 topics comprise a huge portion of the exam. And if you are deficient in either one of those 3 categories, you're going to get hammered on this exam and you will not pass. Again, if you're getting lit up on one of those 3 categories, forget about passing, because when you have an exam that has 200 questions, excluding the 50 pilot questions, and the musculoskeletal comprises about 25 to 30% of those questions, and again, your neurological comprises about 20 to 25%, and then your cardiopulmonary comprises around 15%, that is a substantial amount of material from those three topics. Now, those 3 topics, when we talk about MSK, neuro, and cardiopulm, it can be anything from just the straightforward interventions of those categories, but it's also stuff like diagnostics, and it's also stuff like examination procedures. But you need to be an expert in all 3 of those categories if you have a shot of legitimately passing this exam. So there's other categories you have to study, yes, but you need to focus on those big 3 and hammer them until you're an expert in all of them to ensure that you're going to pass this thing. Tip number 4, nice simple little tip. If you don't have it, get the Score Builders Question of the Day app on your phone. This is a free app from Score Builders, and it just goes through one question a day that's a board-styled question that you get to answer. Whether you answer it right or you answer it wrong, it's going to give you a breakdown of the right answer and why the other answers are the wrong answers. And just doing one question a day is a great way to keep momentum going and to start building up, again, your kind of mentality of where you're at with all your studying and learning and knowing your material. So get that free app, Score Builders Question of the Day. Great app to be using. All right, now number 5, I want you to take practice exams, but take them at appropriately spaced intervals. You want to make sure you space out your practice exams long enough that after you review the first practice exam and you find what you're deficient in, that you have enough time to learn more material in that category so that when you take the next exam, you're able to compare it and say, yeah, I did substantially better in that category that I was weak on the first exam, and I gave myself enough time to study that material. If you're writing your exams close together, you're not giving yourself enough time to work on your weak areas and to know whether your studying is effective or not. So when you take those practice exams, space them out far enough that you at least have enough time to really hammer some of those weak areas that you performed on that first exam. However far you want to space them out, it's up to you, but you need to space them out because that's going to help you understand whether your studying is working, what you need to keep working on, and those types of concepts. So space out your exams appropriately. All right, tip number 6. Now, since we're talking about practice exams here, the next thing I want to mention about them is that you take multiple practice exams, and again, you take enough of them that you can start to identify trends. You can start to identify areas in which you are consistently weak or underperforming, or you can consistently say, hey, I am crushing these categories and these topics. So if you take 3 practice exams and you crush MSK in all 3 of them, that's great. That's likely an indicator that you're doing pretty good in that category. You can pull off the throttle a bit on that and focus more of your time and efforts on other categories that maybe you've been consistently weak on throughout these exams. So take multiple exams and use them as a way to look for these trends, look for these patterns, identify strengths, identify deficiencies. That's going to help guide you in your study process as you go through all the studying and review. All right, tip number 7, develop a remediation list throughout your study process. A remediation list just refers to areas which you need to brush up on, you need to go back and relearn or learn more about. And what's important about having this list is anytime there's something where you don't know the answer and you know that you need to know it, you write it down so that later on you're not going, oh, what was that one thing I needed to go back and study on? I can't remember it now. You have this list and you can fire through this list and start crossing them off once you know that you're competent in those areas. Now, don't freak out if this remediation list grows long and longer and longer. That's going to happen. That happened for me, and it kind of feels like a defeating feeling, but it should actually be an empowering feeling, because what it's going to do is you're going to say, hey, this might be a long list, but anything I don't know is all on this list. So when I master this list, I'm going to be looking good here. I am going to be knowing my stuff inside and out. So carry around a remediation list that you can just start writing stuff down on whenever you need to, so you can come back to it and keep hammering that material. That will pay huge dividends. All right, tip number 8. Now, this is something that I was guilty of when I talk about this. So using myself as an example here, and that's I don't want you to focus on your strengths. I want you to really focus on your weaknesses. I had a nasty habit when I was studying of studying the stuff that I was interested in because that was the stuff that I typically did better in. I love ortho and I love MSK. I had no problem studying that. It was interesting to me, so it was easy to study, and it naturally came easier to me, so it felt good to know all this material, to get quizzed and go, oh man, this feels great, I know all this. The problem is that neuro was always my tougher category, and I didn't want to study it because it just came a little bit more slowly to me, and I had to work a little bit harder for it. And so I had this false sense of security built up for a little bit, thinking I was doing really good, when in fact I was deficient in neuro and really had to brush up on that. So focus on your weaknesses, not on your strengths. Yes, you still need to study all those topics pertaining to your strengths and what you're interested in, but make sure that you're giving adequate time to focus on your weaknesses. It's not as fun, I know, but it'll pay big dividends again, because the last thing you want is to be deficient in one area that's just going to light you up on the exam. Okay, tip number 9. I want you to focus on high yield concepts and topics when you're studying. A high yield topic or concept is just something that by studying it for a few minutes and knowing the global concept around it can actually help you to answer a variety of individual questions that could be thrown at you on the exam. A great example of this might be something like being able to draw out a schematic of the brachial plexus. Being able to draw out a schematic of that plexus can help you actually answer a variety of MSK questions regarding anything from nerve innervations and different nerve root levels and topics based around that. So focus on these high yield concepts that can provide a high number of answers for you based on just knowing the concepts. This is kind of sometimes referred to as the 80-20 rule or the Pareto principle, where you focus on the 20% that can yield you 80% of the results. When you get that under control, when you hammer that 20% that really yields the 80% of the results, if you got time to study after that, then you can go back and you can focus on the 80% that only yields you the 20% of the results. So focus on high yield topics that offer a great return on investment for your study time. All right, tip number 10, the last one we're going to talk about here. When it comes to writing all your practice exams, I want you to write practice exams from different companies, but make sure that you save your PEAT exams, P-E-A-T, the practice examination assessment tool. Those exams, you save them until the end. These exams are actually done by the FSBPT, the same people who administer the NPTE, and their exams are spot on for what you're going to see for the actual NPTE. It's the same computer screen, right? It's the same format, the same layout. You have 250 questions that you have to answer, just like on the actual NPTE exam itself. Now, by saving these until the end, provided that all your other practice exams have been going really good and getting better and better, what you're going to find is that you're going to end on practice exams that completely mimic the actual NPTE. And so you've studied a lot and then you do good on these PEATs and you say, wow, one of those PEAT exams was a retired NPTE and I crushed that. And the other one I did really good on too. And now I know what the format of the computer screens look like. I know the wording that they're going to be using for a lot of these questions. And if I did good on these ones, I'm going to have a lot of confidence going into that NPTE. So use multiple exams from different companies, but save the PEATs until the end. You don't have to, but this is what I would advise, so I'd recommend. And doing so is going to put you in the driver's seat when it comes to knowing that you are confident and you will crush the actual NPTE. Okay, everyone, that's all I've got for today's video. I'm hoping some of those tips helped you out. And again, whatever other tips or insight you have, please leave them in the comment section below. I want to hear what they are. And I know that you can benefit other individuals as well when you leave those tips below. So I'm leaving it at that for today's video. Keep studying hard, keep doing your thing. The grind will pay off. I'm sure you're going to make good things happen. So keep at it and know that good things are coming your way. You guys take care of yourselves. I hope you are all doing well, and I will see you in the next video.